This video was recorded on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pixel, and today on the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel we are going to be taking a look at the recently released Devil May Cry 5 running maxed out at 1440p on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56 graphics card. We will take a closer look at both the performance and the presentation a little bit later on in this video, but for now I want to dive into the game itself. Devil May Cry 5 has been a long time coming. It's been a whole 11 years since the last main Capcom developed entry in the franchise, and 6 years since the DMC reboot that was developed by Ninja Theory. All that time, combined with the move over to the RE engine that powered both Resident Evil 7 and the Resident Evil 2 remake, means that we truly have a generational leap on our hands here that not only pushes the series forward, but also manages to push forward the entire hack and slash genre due to its tight gameplay, beautiful visuals, and tons of replay value. If you have ever played any of the previous Devil May Cry games, then there is a very good chance that you already know exactly what to expect here. Gameplay for the most part is identical to the earlier games, albeit with added polish and mechanics that have been greatly expanded upon. The story too is a continuation of the events laid out in prior games, so if you are jumping in having played the previous Devil May Cry titles, then you will likely find it much easier to get invested into the story. Thankfully, there is a History of Devil May Cry section in the main menu that I recommend that you watch if you are a series newcomer or if it's been a while since you played the originals. Now, I don't want to talk too much about the story, as for the most part it takes place within the time span of a single day, so even talking about events just a few missions in is likely going to be treading into spoiler territory. The core premise though is pretty simple. A demon has attacked Earth and our heroes are simply not strong enough to defeat it, so the goal is to get strong enough so you can. After each mission there are also cutscenes that mainly expand on the events running up until this point. I honestly found some of these to be really intriguing, and while I would definitely not say that it's a super powerful story which is deep and meaningful, it did manage to do enough to keep me invested enough to want to see it through to its conclusion. Progression in Devil May Cry 5 is broken down into two sections. We have the progression that plays out throughout the story, where after certain missions you gain access to new equipment such as devil breakers for Nero and weapons for Dante. And then you've got the progression system that plays out through the upgrade system that persists through multiple playthroughs. By spending your red orbs you are able to unlock new movesets, abilities and gauge expansions. During your first couple of playthroughs you are likely going to be unlocking stuff in nearly every single new mission, meaning that you are going to need to constantly adapt in order to master your full toolset. During the game you will be playing as three main characters, each with their own distinct personalities and playstyles. We have Nero, the young hot-headed devil hunter that we first met in Devil May Cry 4, and then we got V, a mysterious man that due to failing health summons familiars to fight for him, and then we have Dante, the wisecracking son of Sparta himself. Nero plays a sorta assassination style role where the focus is on separating enemies from a group using his grapple hook so you're able to take them down one at a time. Nero also has access to the Devil Breakers, which are mechanical arms that each have their own set of abilities that further expand on your options in combat. However, there is a catch. If Nero takes damage while using a Devil Breaker, the Devil Breaker will, break, so you definitely need to be careful. V, on the other hand, is a very defensive character that relies mainly on his two pet demons to get the majority of the damage laid down before quickly teleporting in to finish the job. You control Shadow, your cat-like demon with melee, and Griffin, your bird-like demon with ranged. You also have access to a nightmare form that spawns a huge golem-style demon to fight alongside you. And finally, we have Dante, who is without a doubt the most complex of the trio to truly master. Dante has access to multiple weapons that all have a massive effect on his moveset, as well as multiple fighting styles that can be switched on the fly and each give special abilities and additional moves. He can also transform into a demon, which changes things up even more. There is an awful lot of depth to this combat system, and that is made very apparent by the inclusion of a combo meter that goes all the way from D up until the triple S rating. Completing the story in this game is only really half of the battle. You then want to go back and play on New Game Plus and max out those mission scores as much as possible. If you only plan to play through this game once, then you are really doing both yourself and the game a disservice. In many ways, the first playthrough is kinda like an extended tutorial that slowly teaches you lots of new stuff all the way up until the very end. It's the New Game Plus mode on the unlocked higher difficulty settings where the game really shines. You get access to all the toys that you have unlocked up until that point, and most of the fights have revised enemy placements that even include bringing in later game enemies in much earlier. Honestly, you would be missing out on so much if you were just to play through this game once and then move on. But finally, let's have a quick look at the presentation and the performance. Again, we played this game maxed out at 1440p on the Sapphire Pulse RX Vega 56 graphics card, and I am pleased to be able to say that the game runs amazingly well. We are looking at an average frame rate around the 110 mark, with dips going barely below 90 and highs upwards of 180 during gameplay. The only real exception to this is in the game's cutscenes that are all rendered in-engine in real time. These show a big variance, but they are still able to stay above the 60 FPS mark for the vast majority of the time. It's also worth mentioning just how far we have come in terms of real-time rendering. The cutscenes on display here are really starting to rival those that are pre-rendered, especially when you consider the lack of video compression artifacts that the pre-rendered cutscenes normally exhibit. Not only do these look great from a graphical standpoint, but the cinematography is also top-notch. Now, due to the variance between the gameplay and the cutscene performance, I have to say that the best way to play this is most likely going to be on a variable refresh rate monitor, so in our case, a FreeSync compatible display. That way, we get to maintain the fluidity of motion while avoiding any screen tearing. I do kinda wish that we had the option to cap the cutscenes to either 60 or 30 frames per second, so we could take advantage of various forms of sync available to us, but unfortunately that is not an option at the time of filming. One aspect of Devil May Cry 5 that I am conflicted about is the graphical settings, as there are a few limitations placed on the PC version that I would have liked to have a little bit of control over. These are graphical effects that are available in the cutscenes but unfortunately not in gameplay, most likely due to performance reasons. The biggest of these omissions has got to be the screen space reflections and the per object motion blur, but it also seems to extend to certain forms of ambient occlusion and even the volumetrics. The reason that I say that I'm conflicted rather than disappointed is because I can understand and even appreciate the developer's focus on performance here. If these options were made available, I would most likely feel forced to activate them, not only for this video, but because I myself hate the feeling of missing out on all that beautiful eye candy. The irony is that due to the speed of the game and the effects popping off all over the place, it's unlikely that we would even notice these effects barring the per object motion blur, yet we would most certainly feel the impact on performance. Personally, I just wish that more games would do what we see in games like Grand Theft Auto 5 and include an advanced graphics options section in the menus and make it clear that tweaking these options is not recommended and that they will likely have a big negative impact on performance for a very small gain in visuals. I know it's just a psychological thing, but I find it so much easier to just leave these settings disabled than I do when the options are in the main menus. While I would not use them now, it would be nice to know that it is going to be possible to come back to this game in a few years time and max it out once PC hardware has reached a point where it completely overpower it. With that said, I want to be clear, the game still looks amazing, especially when you take into consideration the performance that we are pushing out. I suppose I'm just being a little bit greedy, and I suppose the developers are trying to save me from myself. But anyway, in conclusion, Capcom has been on fire now for the last couple of years with many great releases, and Devil May Cry 5 is no exception. There is a lot to love here. It looks great, it plays even better, and most importantly, it's a complete package unlike many games that are released these days. And for that reason, I believe that Devil May Cry 5 is definitely worth picking up if you've got even the remotest of interest in this genre. Now, before I jump off, how about slapping that subscribe button so you get notified of our future uploads? Also, why not check out one of these videos while you're at it? With that said, from myself and everyone here on the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel, I just want to thank you so much for watching to the very end, and I hope to see you again very soon. So until next time, I will catch you later. Bye bye.